Japan built flood walls, tsunami barriers, and underground drainage systems so massive they look like something out of a sci-fi movie. Entire underground cathedrals built just to swallow floodwater and save cities from drowning, bridges strung across mountains, bullet trains slicing through terrain that should be impossible to build on. For decades, the world has looked at Japan and asked the same question: how is this real? This is what happens when a nation decides engineering perfection isn't optional. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. That same jaw-dropping infrastructure, the trains, the tunnels, the seawalls, the bridges, is now quietly costing Japan hundreds of billions of dollars, year after year, just to keep from falling apart. The miracle is aging, and the bill has come due. On pen and paper, Japan might be sitting on a mind-blowing $3.6 trillion net fortune. It holds the title of the world's biggest lender. But the mirror is not so clear as it looks from above. Beneath this monetary shield lies an acute physical vulnerability. Now, why is that so? During its high-growth era from the 1950s through the late 1980s, Japan built an absolute empire of concrete, fueling its hypergrowth with citizens' savings to stack expressways, bullet trains, and massive flood defenses valued at over 800 trillion yen. But now, decades later, that grand 20th century miracle is hitting a high-stakes turning point. The entire staggering network is reaching its structural expiration date all at once. This economical structural challenge does not threaten Japan with conventional sovereign bankruptcy. Instead, it creates a persistent, multi-decade drain on national resources. As you've seen, every single year, Mother Nature strikes. Mega earthquakes shatter mountain passes. Category 5 typhoons batter coastal seawalls. Flash floods erode subterranean sewer lines. And when that happens, the Japanese government doesn't get to choose where its dollars go. Every single dollar spent patching a cracked expressway, retrofitting a 1970s bridge against seismic shocks, or clearing mud from a bullet train corridor, is a dollar stolen from Japan's economic future. Every dollar allocated to routine upkeep, emergency subterranean repairs, or seismic retrofitting is capital diverted away from frontier innovation, defense, and economic expansion. Now, diving into this bigger concept, you need to understand this condition requires analyzing three core pillars: the structural mechanics of Japan's gross domestic product, GDP, engine, and its post-war historical development, the monetary and institutional safeguards that prevent a sovereign debt collapse despite a public debt ratio exceeding 260% of GDP. And lastly, the physical and demographic mechanics of the maintenance trap, where decaying civil assets and acute labor shortages create compounding costs for the state. To understand how Japan accumulated its massive physical capital stock and the maintenance obligations that accompanied it, one must examine the structural trajectory of the Japanese economy over the past 7 decades. Between the 1950s and the late 80s, Japan pulled off one of the greatest economic miracles in human history. How? Simple. Citizens saved their cash, factories pumped out exports, and the government threw crazy money into building the nation. While most Western countries were spending 3 to 4% of their income on basic roads and bridges, Japan was dumping a staggering 6 to 8% of its entire GDP straight into concrete, highways, and high-speed rails. They weren't just building a country, they were engineered for total global domination. Japan modernized its infrastructure through Doboku Koka, the construction state, using public works like roads and bridges for disaster defense and regional wealth redistribution, but ignoring long-term maintenance costs. When Japan's asset bubble burst in 1990, triggering the lost decades, private companies froze investment to pay down debt. To prevent total economic collapse, the government responded by pumping trillions of yen into massive public works stimulus packages throughout the 1990s and 2000s. While the massive public works spending saved Japan's economy from total collapse, it resulted in two severe long-term consequences. National debt skyrocketed from under 70% of GDP in 1990 to over 260% today, and a massive 800+ trillion yen, 15 trillion infrastructure network was created that is now aging all at once, leaving behind a major maintenance time bomb. Now, against all the odds, however, Japan's economy cannot be crushed at all. Since 1996, Japan's economic engine has been pulling in a massive cash surplus every single year. It sits on a staggering net fortune of over $3 trillion in foreign investments, including more than $1 trillion in US government debt alone, making Japan the world's undisputed champion of foreign assets. On top of that, its $8.5 trillion Japanese government bond market is the second largest safe haven on the planet. Now, what does that even mean? When the Bank of Japan makes a major monetary move, the ripple effect slams into global asset prices just as hard as decisions from the US Federal Reserve or the European Central Bank. Also, Japan's massive debt isn't causing a total economic meltdown for the single most important rule in sovereign risk: currency denomination. Unlike countries like Argentina or Greece, which default when they run out of foreign currency or lose control of their money supply, Japan's sovereign debt is 100% in Japanese yen. Because the Bank of Japan, BOJ, can print yen, the government faces no operational limit to pay off its bonds. Consequently, the BOJ has printed money aggressively to buy up over 46%, 561+ trillion yen, of the country's 1,200+ trillion yen debt to suppress interest rates and stabilize the economy. The remaining half of Japan's sovereign debt is distributed across key domestic and international institutional holders. Combined, domestic banks and insurance companies own roughly 30% to maintain long-term stability and liquidity reserves, while foreign investors account for nearly 12%, primarily trading for short-term gains. Public and private pensions hold about 8% to back long-term retirement obligations, with the rest split among general government accounts, domestic households, and smaller financial entities. Japan's government debt functions as a self-sustaining financial fortress, virtually immune to foreign capital flight or global market panics. Because the Bank of Japan, BOJ, holds nearly half the nation's debt, interest paid on those bonds loops directly back to the government as central bank profits. While the BOJ has begun scaling back monthly bond purchases, its massive debt stockpile continues to act as a vital stabilizing buffer for the financial system. Unlike countries dependent on foreign capital to fund budget deficits, Japan finances its spending internally through domestic savings. Japanese households hold a staggering 2,100 trillion yen in wealth, primarily stored in low-yielding bank deposits, cash, and insurance reserves. This wealth powers a simple three-step cycle. Citizens deposit savings into local banks. Banks use those deposits to purchase low-yielding Japanese government bonds, and the government uses that capital to fund its deficits. Ultimately, Japan's government debt is owed by the state to its own citizens in its national currency. Because the entire system operates internally, the economy remains uniquely insulated from foreign investor risk. While monetary policy prevents financial collapse, Japan faces massive physical decay. Over half its infrastructure will cross its 50-year design life within a decade, costing 195 trillion yen to repair. Japan's vast infrastructure network faces a critical race against time, alongside a shrinking workforce. By 2033, 63% of its 730,000 road bridges will exceed 50 years of age, rising to 75% by 2040 and creating severe earthquake and structural risks. Over 62% of flood control structures and 42% of tunnels are also crossing the half-century threshold, suffering from cracked linings and failure risks. Additionally, 31% of sewage pipes are old enough to collapse into urban sinkholes. This massive physical decay is compounded by Japan's continuous working-age population decline since 1995, leaving a severe shortage of specialized labor required for repairs. Japan's construction workforce shrank 30% since 1997, with 36% aged 60+ and under 12% young workers. Regional prefectures face acute engineering shortages, as 80% of local infrastructure hits 50 years. Exacerbated by natural hazards along the Pacific Ring of Fire, Japan's aging infrastructure faces constant environmental stress. Consequently, its construction market is surging toward $941 billion by 2034, driven by urban megaprojects, clean energy transforms, and a 15 trillion yen national resilience plan. However, structural fatigue poses severe invisible risks, evidenced by the fatal 2024 Saitama sinkhole caused by corroded sewage lines. Natural disasters act as force multipliers on decaying assets, as demonstrated by the Noto Peninsula earthquake in January 2024, demonstrated how natural disasters exacerbate infrastructure decay, causing months-long water outages and forcing expensive emergency repairs on aging, vulnerable rural networks. To tackle all these growing risks, the Japanese government isn't sitting around. They've just greenlit a massive 20 trillion yen plan, worth about $139 billion, running from 2026 through 2030, totaling over 20 trillion yen in public and private spending over 5 years. This is Japan's ultimate blueprint to fortify the nation against the next big disaster. Depopulation is slowing new construction in Japan, shifting focus toward structural renovation, retrofitting, and maintenance. As a result, the construction sector is projected to reach JPY 38.75 trillion by 2030, driven by record renovation orders for non-residential facilities, commercial retrofits, and industrial upgrades. But to prevent the maintenance burden from constraining long-term economic growth, Japan is pioneering advanced civil engineering technologies and novel spatial management policies. Faced with a 30% reduction in civil labor, Mellet and private construction firms are deploying automated and remote inspection technologies, like drones with LiDAR, AI-driven structural analytics, and ultra-durable materials to automate inspections and extend aging infrastructure lifespans by decades. To offset depopulation, Japan is adopting smart shrinkage policies, consolidating rural populations into compact cities to decommission redundant infrastructure. Although Japan remains financially resilient against sovereign debt default, it faces a physical crisis, maintaining a 20th century built environment with a shrinking 21st century workforce. Diverting massive capital to preserve aging public works limits investment in frontier technology and global growth. Japan's path forward will offer critical lessons for the rest of the developed world. As nations across Europe, North America, and East Asia encounter aging populations and deteriorating post-war civil infrastructure, Japan serves as the global proving ground for managing structural maintenance challenges. At the end of the day, Japan is writing the ultimate playbook for the modern world. By pairing cutting-edge AI and automation with smart digital management, they aren't just patching up old concrete. They're proving that a shrinking, aging nation can still maintain high living standards, a booming economy, and a rock-solid infrastructure. Japan isn't just fixing its past, it's building the blueprint for all of our futures. Can tech really solve the world's demographic crisis? Let me know what you think in the comments. Until then, don't forget to subscribe.